You just finished eating. You're not hungry, but something in you is still asking for more. That is not weakness. That is not a lack of willpower. That is 40,000 years of programming refusing to believe the famine is over. Your body does not know it is today. It does not know food is one tap away, sitting in a bag on your counter, waiting in a fridge that never runs empty. As far as your biology is concerned, the next meal is never guaranteed, and it has been bracing for that uncertainty since long before you were born. Here is the strange part. You live in the most food abundant moment in human history. So why does your body still act like starvation is one bad week away? The answer starts with a geneticist named James Neel. In the 1960s, he proposed something called the thrifty gene hypothesis. His idea was simple but unsettling. For almost all of human history, food came in waves. Feast, the famine. Feast, then famine. Again and again for thousands of generations. The humans who survived those famines were not the ones who burned through calories quickly. They were the ones whose bodies clung to every spare calorie like it might be the last one for months. That clinging became biology. It became instinct. It became you. Your ancestors who stored fat efficiently during a good harvest outlived the ones who didn't during the bad one that followed. Over time, that efficiency got written so deep into human DNA that it stopped being a strategy and became a default setting. A setting you still carry, a setting built for scarcity, running inside a body surrounded by surplus. Consider how specific this machinery actually is. Insulin, the hormone your body releases after a meal, does more than manage blood sugar. It also signals your fat cells to open up and store incoming energy quickly before that energy can be lost. In a world of unpredictable harvests, that was brilliant design. A body that stored fast survived winters that killed the ones who didn't. But in a world where the next meal is never more than a few steps away, that same fast storing system just keeps filling a tank that never runs low. Is it any wonder the tank overflows? Think about what that actually means. Every time you eat past fullness, every time a snack calls to you an hour after dinner, every time your brain says one more won't hurt, that is not a personal failing. That is an ancient insurance policy still quietly running in the background, still preparing you for a famine that for you will probably never come. But here's a question worth sitting with. What happens to a survival system when the emergency it was built for simply stops arriving? To understand that, look at a study almost nobody outside science remembers, but everybody should. In 1944, researcher Ancel Keys ran what became known as the Minnesota Starvation Experiment. He took healthy young men and dramatically restricted their food for 6 months, studying what happens to a body and mind under real prolonged scarcity. The results were staggering. The men became obsessed with food. They dreamed about it. They collected recipes they had no way of cooking. Some hoarded scraps. Some grew irritable, withdrawn, consumed by thoughts of eating, even though they knew logically the experiment would end and food would return. Their bodies did not care what they knew logically. Their bodies had shifted into a single, all consuming priority: find food, store food, survive. Now, here's the twist. Keys was studying famine, but the same obvious hoarding can't stop thinking about it pattern shows up today in something almost nobody connects to starvation at all. Dieting. When you drastically cut calories in the modern world, your body cannot tell the difference between a diet and a famine. It reacts exactly the same way it reacted in Minnesota in 1944. It slows your metabolism, it ramps up hunger signals, it makes food the loudest voice in the room. Not because you lack discipline, but because your body is running the oldest emergency protocol it has, the one built to keep a starving human alive long enough to find the next meal. This is part of why so many diets fail and why the failure so often gets blamed on the person instead of the biology. You're not fighting a lack of willpower, you're fighting a system perfected over hundreds of thousands of years to make you obsess over food the moment it senses scarcity, real or imagined. Researchers who followed upon cases of subjects decades later found something just as revealing. Even after the men were allowed to eat freely again, many overshot their original weight before their bodies finally settled. It was as if something inside them was determined to build a buffer, a cushion against whatever famine might come next. Your body, it turns out, does not aim for balance, it aims for insurance. So, what looks like overeating after a period of restriction is not a lack of control, it is a very old, very literal safeguard, one your ancestors needed and one you inherited whether you wanted it or not. So, what changed? Why does this ancient wiring feel so out of place now? Nutrition researcher Barry Popkin has spent decades studying something called the nutrition transition, the sudden, historically unprecedented shift from food scarcity to food abundance that happened in many parts of the world in just the last century. For nearly all of human existence, calories were hard won. You walked for them, you hunted for them, you waited for seasons to bring them. Then, in a blink of evolutionary time, that changed. Food became cheap, constant, engineered to be irresistible, and available at every hour of the day. Your genes did not get the memo. They are still running famine-era software on feast-era hardware, and the mismatch between the two is not a flaw in you, it is a flaw in timing. Evolution moves across thousands of generations. The modern food system arrived in one. Popkins' research tracked this shift across entire nations, watching diets move from grains and vegetables gathered or grown by hand towards sugar, refined oil, and processed calories available at any hour, in any season, with almost no effort at all. What once took an entire day of walking, digging, or hunting to earn now takes seconds and a few coins. The body built for scarcity never had to develop a break for that. It only ever needed an accelerator. This is the mismatch in a single sentence. You are given an accelerator built for scarcity and dropped in a world with no scarcity left to accelerate toward. This is why the pull toward second helpings, toward late night snacking, toward stress eating when nothing is actually wrong, doesn't feel like a choice. It doesn't feel like a choice because it isn't fully won. It is an ancestor speaking through you, one who lived through the real famine, one whose survival depended on exactly this instinct, whispering to take more just in case. And maybe that's the real reframe here. The problem was never that your body is broken. Your body is doing exactly what kept your ancestors alive. It is simply doing it in a world that no longer needs that protection. A world no abundant it has outpaced the very instincts that built it. Understanding that doesn't erase the instinct, but it changes how you see it. Shame has never been a good tool for outsmarting biology. Awareness might be, knowing why the pull exists, knowing exactly which ancestor is speaking and exactly what they lived through gives you something willpower alone never could. It gives you a reason. The next time you feel that pull toward one more bite when you are already full, you're not weak, you're ancient. You're the living result of 100,000 famines your ancestors survived, so that you could sit here in a world of endless food, still bracing for a scarcity that, for you, may never come. You just finished eating, you're not hungry, but something in you is still asking for more, and now you know exactly who is asking.